Good morning, Rotarians. Please take your seats appropriately, timely. You too, Mr. Cleveland Indians. Our guardians, excuse me. Can we have some peace and quiet? Good morning, Rotarians. My name is Rich Warfield. I'm your acting Sergeant of Arms. Mr. Strobel is in Minnesota this week. So welcome to Rotary Club here on May 11th, 2022. With all that being said, the prayer is going to be done by the great and powerful Father Joe.
Morning, everyone. With so much turmoil in the world, especially in Ukraine, but also elsewhere where there is a lack of peace, I thought praying for peace today would be good. Shall we stand as we pray? Let us pray. Almighty God, from whom all thoughts of truth and peace proceed, kindle, we pray, in the hearts of all people the true love of peace, and guide with your pure and peaceable wisdom those who take counsel for the nations of the earth, that in tranquility your kingdom may go forward till the earth is filled with the knowledge of your love. Amen.
Thank you, Father Joe. And now for the four-way test and pledge allegiance, Mr. Kelly Brennan.
All right, enough from the peanut gallery. Could you all assist me with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we get a four-way test thing here? Yeah, we do. Okay, can you all join me in the four-way test of the things we think, say, and do? Number one, is it the truth? Number two, is it a fair to all concerned? Number three, will it be? Number four. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And before I turn over to our current president, Mr. Pat, there's going to be a pool cleaning event on June 4th. At the Boy Scouts camp. I need volunteers. I can't do it all myself. Coach, raise your hand. You in town? June 4th, it's a Saturday. There'll be an email going out. Feel free to come. There's continental breakfast before we get started, and there's a wonderful lunch after we get done. So please, it'd be great to have you there. And before I turn over to Pat, there's one little bit of tidbit on sports, since we have Mr. Cleveland Guardian here. What a comeback win the other day, which I'm sure you're going to talk about. I went to sleep, and next thing I know, I woke up, they won. But they are in second place behind the Minnesota Twins right now, but I'm sure they'll catch them. So, so with that being said, here's Pat.
Thank you. So our quote to start the day: the key to winning a baseball game is pitching, fundamentals, and of course, hitting 3-run home runs. Earl Weaver. Maryland, I want to do an auction update.
Okay, I'm here to do some projections. We're about 10 days out from our auction. And I'd like to let you know that it's looking like we're going to be a little bit smaller this year. We anticipate that the attendees is going to be about 175 to 190. We're also looking at a very strong set of silent auction and live auction items, but it's looking like it's coming in at about 100. So at this point, I am looking for bourbon. We have 8 bottles of bourbon, including 4 that are priced at more than $90. So I'm excited about that. We're also looking for bottles of wine because those are live auction items that we put together. If you have not bought your tickets, please do so. This is a gentle reminder that one of the obligations or expectations of Rotary members is that they support our gala with the purchase of 2 tickets. If you cannot attend, we will offer those to others that might, or we may simply take the money and put it towards the good cause that we're really raising this all for, the cabin. But I'd like to give you just a little bit of a preview of some of the silent auction items. We have a Trek Verve 4 bicycle, gently used, that was sold new for $950. Our expectation is that it'll bring between 4 and 5. We also have several spa day packages for the ladies, and we have everything from a fix up your shop to golf packages for the gentlemen. We have music packages to several of the symphonies, including Blossom. So we've got some exciting things coming. And I see a little bag right down there with a big C on it. And I'm curious as to tell us what's in there. I'm sure Bob will tell me. So we're excited about going forward and look for the Facebook posts that Jay does. And if you would please like those and share those. That has been very helpful in getting the word out about some of the exciting things that we have going. The auction is going to go live the beginning of next week, hopefully Monday. And I'm very grateful for the support and help that I've gotten from Dan Filburn and Joe Avella and the other members of the committee. And right now, Evan is backing me up on the computer platform, and things are swimming. We're coming along. We're going to bring this thing home. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marilyn, for your leadership on this project. This month's service project is for Head Start. So we're collecting new or gently used shoes and clothing for children 5 and under. So remember to bring those items in with you to any one of our May meetings. Due to last Saturday's sogginess, let's just call it that, the pollinator garden project was moved to this Saturday at 9 o'clock. So I think the weather forecast for this Saturday is much better than the forecast was for last Saturday, or the actual weather was for last Saturday. So please join us at 9 a.m. at McDowell Elementary for the establishment of that new pollinator garden. There will be a club board meeting immediately following today's regular club meeting. And save June 29th on your calendars for the changing of the guard dinner. It will be at Blue Canyon, and more information will be coming out on that next week. Jim, would you like to introduce our speaker?
Well, first of all, I don't think this gentleman needs introduction to the people here, but for the sake of the people that are watching us remotely and the TV show and the audience in the cyberspace, I have a little bio on Mr. Bob DiBiasio, who is the current Senior Vice President of Public Affairs of the Cleveland Guardians. And Bob is actually in his 43rd year with the Indians and his 44th year with Major League Baseball. He started with the Tribe in 1979 as Assistant PR Director, was named PR Director in 1980, and Vice President of PR in 1988. He's from Lakewood, Ohio, and was promoted to his current position in 2011. His lone season away from the Tribe was in 1987, and he served as PR chief for the Atlanta Braves. Bob serves as president of the Cleveland Guardians Charities and is recently named president of the Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame, which is going to be expanded with his leadership and making people more aware of what that organization is all about. I think I volunteered to help him. He's also a member of the executive board of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Cleveland, serves on the athletic advisory board of Notre Dame College, Ohio, and is a member of the board of directors of the Cuyahoga County Public Library Foundation, the Bob Feller Active Foundation, and the Baseball Heritage Museum in League Park. Bob is also the host of the popular Indians Alumni Roundtable Show on Sportstime Ohio, as well as Tribe Tales, which is a Where They Are Now segment that airs pregame every Sunday on the Indians radio network. He was the 1999 recipient of the prestigious Robert O. Fischel Award for Public Relations and Excellence in Major League Baseball. He was inducted into the Lakewood High School Distinguished Alumni Hall of Fame in 1999. In 1986, Bob was named the Public Relations Director to the Sports Illustrated Dream Team. Bob graduated from Lakewood High School in 1973. He earned degrees in journalism and education from Ohio Wesleyan University in 1977. While at Ohio Wesleyan, Bob was the sports editor of the school paper, The Transcript, the student sports information director, and did color on Ohio Wesleyan football and basketball broadcasts. Bob also played 1 year of basketball and 2 years of baseball at Ohio Wesleyan. And in 1978, he earned a master's degree in journalism from the Ohio State University and started a stint as assistant sports editor of the Fremont, Ohio News Messenger before joining the Indians. Bob and his wife Penny reside in Solon, Ohio. They have 2 adult children, a daughter Julie, married to Matt, and a son Patrick, married to Liz. And without further ado, a round of applause from our audience for Bob DiBiasio. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning, everybody. That was way more than you needed to know. But thank you, Jim. One addition to that bio, though, I have to say, is a grandson, our first grandson, came along in October, Max Henry DiBiasio. So that's been the joy of our last year for sure. It's always fun to come and chat with you about Guardians baseball and what we're up to. And I think I'll give you a little overview of what's happening in Major League Baseball these days, and then open it up to questions, since this group normally has some very good questions for me. On April 15th, we ushered in our 122nd season as a charter member of the American League. So think about that for one moment. Way back in 1901, professional baseball in the American League began in our town. It's one of the oldest institutions in our city. Actually, professional baseball in the city of Cleveland began in 1886, just a few years after the end of the Civil War. So baseball's been a part of the fabric of this region for a long, long time. And we did so with the 5th name in franchise history. So I'll give you a quick history lesson. In 1901, when we became a charter member of the American League, we were called the Blues or the Bluebirds, depending upon which of the 6 newspapers in Cleveland, Ohio at that time you were reading. Nicknames didn't mean all that much at that time. 1902, because when we were the Blues or Bluebirds, the story goes, the players did not like the pale blue uniforms they wore. They didn't feel they were manly enough. So the next year they changed to wearing black and white uniforms and changed the name to Broncos. Then in 1903, the owner of the team stole a great player from the National League, from the team in Philadelphia, by the name of Napoleon Lajoie, one of the great Hall of Fame second basemen in the history of baseball. And the owner wanted to make sure people were aware that this great player was playing in the upstart American League in Cleveland. So he changed the name to the Naps. We were the Cleveland Naps from 1903 till Mr. Lajoie retired in 1914. So the owner got the media, the writers at that time together and said, okay, we now need a new name. You know, Napoleon Lajoie is retired, so what are we going to call ourselves? It ended up landing on the name Indians, and the mythology around that is pretty interesting as we've studied it over the years. So the start of the 1915 season, we needed a new name. In 1914, the Boston Braves won the World Series. So there was one sense of the mythology that the Native American name motif with the Braves brought luck and winning is part of the reason we chose Indians, in addition to a gentleman by the name of Louis Francis Sockalexis, who was the first Native American to play professional baseball, who did so for Cleveland, played for the Cleveland Spiders back in the late 1880s. And there was a connection there that he was a terrific athlete, an All-American at Holy Cross, and that had something to do with naming the team the Indians. So there's varied stories on how all that happened, but to set the record straight, we chose to do this on our own. Ownership felt it was the right thing to do, and we have moved on from a name we had for more than 100 years, and the execution, the decision to make a name change, and the execution in the brand and marketing of a name change in such a short period of time is an absolute case study in how decisions are made in organizations and how you execute decisions that are made. We have our strategy and branding committee who was truly the driver in that, visiting a lot of college campuses, discussing those issues and how decisions get made in corporations and how you execute a brand strategy. On April 15th as well, we opened up the 29th season at Progressive Field. So think about that for a second, how we think in a blink of an eye, we're almost at 3 decades in a brand new ballpark in downtown Cleveland. We had an absolute blast on opening day. Tom Hanks threw out the ceremonial first pitch for us and so invested in our franchise. He threw the first pitch to Larry Doby Jr. We are celebrating the 75th anniversary of breaking the color barrier in the game of Major League Baseball. Jackie Robinson in April, of course, and then Larry Doby breaking the color barrier in the American League just 11 weeks later as a member of the Cleveland Indians, as his first at bat came on June 5th or July 5th in Comiskey Park in Chicago. You might be wondering why Tom Hanks became so closely attached to us. The quick story is when he was 19 years old, he had a dream in his life that he wanted to be an actor. And the Great Lakes Shakespeare Festival was held at my high school, Lakewood High. We had 4,000 students when we were going there, and our auditorium at Lakewood High held 2,500 to 3,000. So the Great Lakes Shakespeare Festival was produced out of our high school from the mid 60s to probably the early 80s when it moved downtown. And so Tom comes as a 19, 20-year-old kid living just across the street from the high school with 4 or 5 other guys in a rented house, and begins his acting career. And he did 3 things while he was in Lakewood. He worked at the Shakespeare Festival. He went to Cleveland Indians baseball games. He was always fond of telling a story that on 117th on the border at Lakewood and Cleveland, there's a grocery store. He'd get a loaf of bread and a pound of bologna, he and his buddies, and they'd pay $1.25 to get into section 109, and they fell in love with the Cleveland baseball team. And then he'd go to a bar called Mary Arts in Lakewood that said his first experience with 3-2 beer. And so his love affair with us has been real. His investment in us is remarkable. We had asked him to narrate our team name change video, and he didn't blink an eye. He said, absolutely. Wrote me an email and said, I've got Guardians fever, so just I'm here to help in any way I can. So it was really a wonderful opportunity to have a man of that stature help us usher in a new era of Cleveland baseball. We're almost at the 30-game mark, or we might be right at the 30-game mark right now with the season, and it's been an interesting run so far. We've been team streak of sorts. Early in our campaign, we either swept whoever we were playing or we got swept. It is probably not that odd to think in those terms, simply because we are the youngest team in Major League Baseball. And in fact, we are the 5th youngest team in the last 30 years of Major League Baseball. That's how young we are. And it's by design. We believe in our young athletes. In the last number of years, we've been acquiring a whole lot of young talent and producing out of our own draft some terrifically talented young people. And it's time that we learn which of those young players are keepers, which one of those young players can make an impact at the big league level. And there's only one way to find out if a young athlete can make an impact at the big league level, and that's to play him. And once you play him, you're going to deal with bumps and bruises and peaks and valleys in the growth and development of a young athlete. Not every player grows and develops at the same rate. I would ask each and every one of you, if you're the same person you were in your early 20s, did your growth chart go straight up? Or did it have a little bit of peaks and valleys along the way? And I would think that there were bumps and bruises along the way. So we have to live with those bumps and bruises with our young athletes. And truly, we need to be patient. The most hated word of fans in sports is to be patient. But we need to be patient and just provide every resource possible to allow these young men to be the best that they can be. As is the case in every season, we're going to go through 3 things. We're going to go through periods of elation, like the other night, when everybody went to bed as we were losing 8-2, and they wake up and we won 12-9, scoring, I think, what was it, 11 runs or something, or 10 runs in the last 3 innings, all by Josh Naylor himself. Even my wife woke up and turned to me and said, we got our butts kicked last night. And I said, no, we didn't. She went to bed before the end of the game, of course. Best way to watch baseball is just to sit back and enjoy what makes our game the greatest game that's ever been created, and that's the daily drama of over 6 months. Just keep an eye on this young team, see what identity they grow into on their own. They've already shown some incredible resilience. They show a hungry energy. They're absolutely talented players. And once they settle in, it'll be really fun to watch how they do challenge in the American League Central Division. As was said, right now, the Minnesota Twins are right above us. We play them in a 3-game series this weekend at their place, so that'll be fun. Chicago and us are right there behind Minnesota. Kansas City, Detroit struggling a little bit right now, but we absolutely expect to work towards another division title. So this season will be filled with a number of challenges, no question about it. But again, keep an eye out for the identity that this team creates. Last season, we were 80-82. The first time that we had a losing season in the last 9 years. It broke a string of 8 straight winning seasons. It broke a string of 5 straight seasons where we won 90+ games. Now, being a PR man, I get to embellish every once in a while. I will say that we had 90+ win seasons for 5 straight years, simply because if you allow me, the 2020 season, we only played 60 games. But our winning percentage, if you extrapolated it over 162 games, would have given us 94 wins. So I take that as part of the stretch. Now, the reason I bring that up, yes, it's new math. It's new math. I say this because the stretch of 90+ wins, you really need to understand where that ranks in the history of our franchise. There's only one other time in the history of our franchise that we have won 90+ games more than 5 years in a row. And that was the 1950 to 1955 Cleveland Indians with the big four, Lemon, Wynn, Garcia, Feller, with Larry Doby playing center field as an all-star, Al Rosen in third base as an all-star and an MVP, some terrifically awesome baseball teams back in that period of time from 1950 to 55. So they won 90+ games 6 years in a row, most ever in our franchise history. So for us to do it 5 years in a row, if you allow the winning percentages to play into that thought process, we're running through a pretty good period of time. We just haven't crossed the finish line, which is the standard we hold for all of us, that we need to cross the finish line and hoist the World Series trophy. Our president of baseball operations, Chris Antonetti, our general manager, Mike Chernoff, have absolutely created a sustained winning culture ever since, especially exclamation point, when Terry Francona came aboard as our skipper in 2013. He's just been a game changer in the way he goes about being a leader on our baseball team in that dugout. He's a Hall of Famer for sure. And these young players just absolutely love playing for a guy they know is better than the guy across the field in the other dugout. And Tito's health is back. He's re-energized these young kids, as young kids will do for you. They will energize you. Our sport went through a difficult off season. The labor discussions, nobody wants to spend 100 days hearing about the players and the owners and how they can't get along and share the wealth that is involved in our industry. But one of the things that came out of that, which I thought was wonderful, because something positive had to come out of having a stoppage of 100 days in our industry, was the idea that we really look critically at who we are in the game of baseball. That we've created a game that isn't all that fun for people to watch. It certainly didn't take advantage of the incredible athleticism of our players. These are the biggest, fastest, strongest baseball players that have ever put on uniforms, and we weren't doing enough to highlight and show off how awesome they really are. And so they sat back and decided, how do we make the game more enjoyable for our fans and for the players? We had become a game where there's a whole ton of strikeouts, more strikeouts than hits. There was a whole ton of walks, and then there was the home run, but not a lot else. And that's no way to try to entertain people, or again, utilize the athleticism of our guys. So we looked at how do we make the game better. So I'll mention a few here. First, we embrace technology. And how did we do that? There's a thing called PitchCom that has been involved in the game this year that is created simply to create pace of play, to speed up the game a little bit. And what PitchCom is all about, if you can picture an Apple Watch, the face of an Apple Watch, and picture an old telephone with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Either the catcher will wear it on his wristband or take the face and put it on a shin guard. For example, if he presses number 1, there's a receiver in the pitcher's hat, in his baseball cap. And if he presses number 1, it might say fastball inside. And so he's hearing it in his ear instead of putting the fingers down between the catcher's legs. The shortstop, the second baseman, and the center fielder are also wearing a receiver in their ball cap. So they know how to position themselves. They know what pitch is coming. They know who's hitting. They know where the tendencies are for that gentleman to hit the ball when the certain pitch is thrown. So I will move around my position a little bit to play better defense. In spring training, it was pretty interesting. Shane Bieber, our Cy Young Award winner, was the guinea pig. So his first start in spring training this year, he's got the pitch count. And as the catcher's throwing it back to him, warming up, the ball goes around the infield. You know, he gets the ball from the third baseman, and by the time he gets to the mound, it's already, let's just say, fastball inside. So he gets on the mound, fires a fastball inside, catcher, ball's being tossed back to him. And as the ball's in the air, he's hearing curveball low and away. And he catches the ball and throws. And all of a sudden, he's catching and throwing, catching and throwing, catching and throwing, and he's gassed. He's already out of breath because he's never pitched that quickly in his life. And he had to step back and say, okay, here's a learning experience. I'm going to have to figure out the rhythm of this thing. But all of them, there's 27 out of 30 baseball teams that are using the PitchCom, and our guys love it. I know most of the pitchers in the game of baseball today have said that they absolutely, after working through some kinks early on, have really come to enjoy it. But again, 27 out of the 30 teams are taking advantage of it. Now, the question that always comes to me on that one is, how quickly will the Houston Astros cheat and learn how to encrypt the signals going from the catcher to the pitcher? The people who created this software and this program from Carlsbad, California, say that it is so highly encrypted that and the timing of the back and forth doesn't give anybody an opportunity to hack into the system. So number one, pace of play, and it's already affected pace of play, and the pitchers are giving it a thumbs up. Oddly, we have larger bases in the game of baseball today. Wonder why would that be? Well, bases were 15 square inches last year. This year, they're 18 square inches. So there's 3 inches bigger. First and foremost, the reason why is health and safety of our players, to avoid the bang-bang collisions, especially around second base and at other bases. It also promotes more base stealing, a chance to go from first to second or first to third, more activity on the bases. As a player who's quick and a good base runner, well, that extra 3 inches when you slide in has an impact on whether you're safe or out. And we've seen it early in our season with guys stealing and they get called out, and then they point to the dugout, which means I was safe, go to the replay, and the call is overturned. So it has promoted some more activity on the bases, which is exactly the whole idea. The other thing that's interesting is a base was 3 inches high. It's now 2.5 inches. One of the worst things that happened in our game when instant replay came about was the fact when a guy would slide into second base and his leg would come off for a half a second or a millisecond, and the guy would still have his tag on the leg, they'd go to instant replay and he'd be called out. Well, that was not the intent of instant replay, that on a guy sliding into a base and his leg coming off for just a moment, that took the competitive edge experience out of the game of baseball. And so they put a little tackier substance on the base, shrunk it to 2.5 inches, which means the player's leg will stay on the base a little longer, so that we aren't involved in that situation. But the health and safety and promoting more base stealing, more activity on the bases, and in the first 30 games, we've seen that as well. The universal DH, finally in our game. I don't know why it took so long. Those of us that would always watch our pitchers in the World Series try to hit, where the National League got to just put a guy off their bench and pinch hitter, a guy that, had 300-400 at bats during the year, get to hit in the American League Park. The rules just didn't make sense. And so finally, there's a DH in both leagues. Some rules that are going to come into place next year. There's a pitch clock that is going to be instituted. The pitch clock, you'll have 14 seconds once you catch the ball to deliver it back to home plate. If you don't, it's a ball. With runners on base, you have 19 seconds. So with pitch calm and the pitch clock coming, I think the pace of play in baseball is really going to speed up, and it's going to add to the enjoyment for sure. The shift, as you now see our game, there's players playing all over the place. A left-handed hitter comes up and there's 5 guys over on the right side of the field. They're toying with the idea that you can still shift, but all infielders have to have their cleats on the dirt instead of playing short right field like softball. Our manager is wondering whether he likes this rule or not. As our baseball people, you're starting now to really dive into the competitive aspect of the game. Our manager is already not a real fan of the fact that when he brings in a reliever, they have to face 3 batters. Now, if you come in with 2 outs and get the guy out, you don't have to come out the next inning and face 2 more. You can clean out an inning before 3 batters. But if you don't, you've got to face at least 3 hitters. And he's not a fan of that one, you're telling me I can't use my people, my players, the way I want to. You're dealing with the competitiveness of the game and the fact that we think we're smarter than the guy across the way. And it's the same with, you're telling me I can't put people where I want on the field, when if we execute a pitch, we know 90% of the time a young man's going to hit the ball in a certain spot if our pitcher executes a pitch in the right place. And so there's a lot of discussion going on that one. The automatic strike zone, we absolutely believe the automatic strike zone. If Major League Baseball came to each team today and said, we need the automatic strike zone and it's going to be implemented this weekend, every team in baseball would have the ability to put that in place. It's already been around. So I mentioned all of these. One good thing that our industry had done, all of the things I mentioned were implemented in the minor leagues the last few years. So all the young athletes had a chance to play with bigger bases and the pitch clock and all of those things. There's many more changes that are coming that I didn't mention. One is in a certain at bat, Mike Trout's at home plate, Shane Bieber's on the mound. How many times is he allowed to throw over to first with a guy on first? Right now in the minor leagues, it's only twice, so that you don't have somebody just lobbing it over there 4 or 5 times. And again, the pace of play, getting this game more active. So the minor leaguers, so the players give you incredible feedback on what works and doesn't work. the manager and coaching staff in the dugout, the umpires. So you're getting real reactions from the right people on what's happening in our great game of baseball. So before I end and get to the Q&A session, I just want to share two thoughts about the great game of baseball. And the first one is we run a program through our Guardians Community Impact Program. It's called Play Ball CLE. Thousands and thousands of youngsters get an opportunity to play the great game of baseball and the game of softball throughout Northeast Ohio on our nickel. And one of the things that we are most proud of is the fact that we now have 180 coaches, parents, just interested baseball people that want to interact with kids. And so we work very hard to provide them the necessary training to run a great baseball or softball practice, the life lessons that baseball can teach. And there are 3 life lessons because baseball absolutely oozes with life lessons. And there's 3 that we like to highlight with those coaches. The first one is talk to kids like they matter, because you will make a huge impression. Number 2, which I think is my absolute favorite, back somebody up instead of just standing around. And third, no matter how badly you screwed up today, you will have a chance to come back tomorrow. Those are 3 life lessons, more that baseball teaches, such as sportsmanship and teamwork, cooperation, etc. But I just love the back somebody up. If you are a fan of baseball and you know the game, when a ball is hit, all 9 players on the baseball field are moving. They're not just standing. They all have a place to go, no matter where the ball is hit. That reference of just back somebody up, just don't stand around. Lastly, I'd like to read the following quote from former famed newscaster John Chancellor, which opened the remarkable 9-inning series by the great Ken Burns. Those of you who might know Ken Burns, one of the preeminent documentary filmmaker on PBS in our country, did one on baseball, a 9-part series that he called 9 Innings of Baseball. And here is the absolute opening of the 9 innings. Before I read the couple paragraphs, it's interesting to note Ken Burns started that whole process of creating that series with an interview in Tucson, Arizona at High Corbett Field with our own Bob Feller. And he and I were sitting in the stands and he was telling me what was in his head, how he was going to create this documentary, and just a genius. And then to see the end result, if you haven't seen it and you're a baseball fan, go to YouTube or wherever and click on PBS. And he also does the phenomenal one on our national parks that is just off the charts. But here's the quote on baseball. Baseball is a leisurely game that demands blinding speed, the only game in which the defense has the ball. At its heart lie mythic contradictions. It's a pastoral game in crowded cities, an exhilarating democratic sport that tolerates cheating and has excluded as many as it has included. It's a profoundly conservative game that often manages to be years ahead of its time. It is an American odyssey that links sons and daughters to fathers and grandfathers, and it reflects a host of age-old American tensions between workers and owners, scandal and reform, the individual and the collective. It is a haunted game in which every player is measured against the ghosts of all who have gone before. Most of all, it is about time and timelessness, speed and grace, failure and loss, imperishable hope, and coming home, says all you need to know about the great game of baseball. So with that, who wants to be Miles Straw, who is our leadoff hitter, and have the first question? Batter up.
Hey, first of all, thanks for coming. Always look forward to you being here, and yeah, great for me. Oh, my number one. Now I'm on. All right. Yeah. Again, thanks for coming. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. So this tension between the evolution of baseball and the traditionalists of baseball. I grew up near Dayton. I could not believe that you had a designated hitter. Make your pitcher bat, for crying out loud. You got a double switch you have to consider. You've got all the sort of, and that's the part, the mental part of the game.
Right.
And so, yeah, how do you say to those traditionalists who we hold on tight, don't do this, and the progressive people of baseball, don't take this into American politics, but the progressive people who are changing the game and want to make it into something different. How do you balance that?
Well, that's a good question because, we're one of the few teams that have an old guy in the dugout. Most of these teams today, the managers are in their 30s, early 40s, and there's not many teams that have 60-year-old managers that played ball in the 80s. And Terry is one of those. Is struggling with, as I said, with some of these that deal with the competitive aspect of the game of baseball. Analytics has brought in a whole new twist in our world. Every one of you in business are now involved in analytics and on your business side, as we are, not just on the baseball side. So the eye test isn't the only way you go about things. Instinct isn't the only way that a decision is made. There's now data that is connected to what you see with your eyes and what you feel in your heart in your industry. I would have to say, and this is coming from somebody who grew up in Cleveland, and the DH was established in 1974, the first DH in the history of our franchise, John Ellis. He was a fan of the DH, and all my National League friends who I have arguments with on this topic, I always tell them, I'm sure you've walked into Great American Ballpark or any National League park prior to this year, and you turned to your buddies and friends and said, boy, I wonder what inning we're going to do the double switch. I can't wait for that monumental, exciting moment in the game of baseball. But you laid it up. You put it on the tee for me, sir. You put it on the tee for me on the double switch thing. There are some pitchers in the National League who are not very happy because they prided themselves on the fact that they're, in their sense, a true baseball player, that they just happen to pitch, but they can hit pretty darn well. And some have pinch hit early in the year. Not many, just a few. So it's not an easy thing, as anything when change comes about.
So anyway, I'm with Joe on that. In fact, one of my favorite quotes was, I think Ken Brett said he was the better hitter.
You're right.
Old people will know.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
reference.
right. We'll know Ken Brett, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and George Brett.
Yeah.
But anyway, so a couple things. First of all, just a comment. I think back in 1915, if the team had been called the Guardians, and then they had decided to change the name to the Indians this year, there would have been people tremendously upset, and how could you possibly do that? And this is terrible. So it feels like it's, like you said, the transition was very smooth and not hard to root for the Guardians. But my question is this, and I think I see it too in football when you look at quarterbacks starting out or pitchers starting out or new batters, you'll have this phenomenal first year or first part of the season, and then they seem to kind of taper off. And I'm wondering how much of that is other teams getting used to them, studying them and adjusting to them. And,
Right.
and then how do you readjust?
Readjust. Yeah, even for a 5-year veteran hitter, has to adjust each and every year to how teams pitch to them. I'll give you an example, and I don't mean to pick on this young man because he's a terrific young man and went through horrible injuries with his shoulder and tried to make it, and we released him in spring training. He's playing with the Toronto Blue Jays right now, and that's Bradley Zimmer. Bradley Zimmer is a 6'5", 230-pound athlete, our #1 draft pick out of the University of San Francisco a number of years ago, and just could not make it in the big leagues. All of a sudden, he's hitting like crazy the first month of the season, and then they find out he can't hit a high fastball. He cannot lay off it. So they just keep throwing him high and high and high, and then all of a sudden low and away, and he finally sees a pitch that he might be able to get after, and he swings and misses, and his strikeout rate was something up to 40% or some horrible rate. And he's changed his batting stance from being real wide to standing straight up, and just couldn't find his way. The analytics that are involved in today, the software that is involved in today's game, the intriguing aspect of the analytics will find out where the swing and misses are and where the absolute barrel to the ball contact exit velocity of 100 miles an hour is in a guy's swing. So you pitchers try to avoid that piece of the hitter's swing, and the analytics are ridiculous. So now our coach can bring a pitcher, Shane Bieber, in and say, okay, you're facing the LA Angels, and you've got Mike Trout, and you've got Shohei Ohtani, who's the most remarkable athlete, I think, on the planet today, that he can. The other night, after a week of being a DH and hitting a ton of home runs, he pitches into the 9th inning, throwing 98 miles an hour in the 9th inning. Just remarkable. He's the only two-way guy. They actually have an Ohtani rule in place that if he gets beat up in the 1st or 2nd inning of a game and they take him out as a pitcher, he's allowed to stay in the game as the DH instead of coming out of the game. And they call it the DH rule, but it's really the Ohtani rule because he's really the only guy that it impacts. But that is the biggest issue in our game. A kid, you know, the ones who have stuck around are the ones who know how to adjust. And it's not just year to year, it's at bat to at bat. And some will tell you it's within an at bat. Our guys this year have a different approach. We don't swing from the heels, even with 2 strikes, and try to hit the ball into the seats. We're not a home run hitting team. So hopefully it'll be a little more difficult with our young players to figure out where their soft spot is, because their goal is just to put the bat on the ball and get running around the bases. We lead the league in runs scored. We lead the league in hitting with runners in scoring position. We lead the league in batting average. People thought our offense was going to be the worst in baseball. And right now, our different approach with a new hitting coach is all about, just as Rod Carew would say, there's 2 foul poles on a baseball field. So hit the ball somewhere in between them instead of thinking you need to hit the ball in a left-handed hitter only can pull the ball and hit it into the seats. So, yes, sir.
Yeah, unfortunately, Zimmer had a lot of praise as a young talent coming in, and I forget the judge, the guy from New York.
Yes.
He's a lot of talent too, and he's been
Oh.
able to adjust where Zimmer probably hasn't been
Right.
able to do that. But one is a statement, one's a question. Looks like Ramirez is the old man of the roster now,
Yes, sir.
huh?
And a great one on top of that. You know, there's real quickly on Jose Ramirez. Think about a young man that one of the first, when it comes to becoming a free agent in the game of baseball, a player has worked probably since they were 10 years old and having the dream to be a big league baseball player. And you work in a system that keeps you with one team at the big leagues for 6 years. And after that 6 years, you have the right to stand up and say, okay, who wants my services? And here's my chance to have some incredible earning power because they only have a finite period of time in their lives with that skill to earn their keep. And most of them will go where the money is. That's why I love Albert Bell more than any other player. When he became a free agent, he was the first one to be truly honest. He stood up and said, I want to be the highest paid player in baseball, and I don't care where I play. Instead of saying, oh, I want to stay, and their fingers are crossed and they're behind their back because they're just going wherever, the highest paid contract is, which is their right. And they've earned that opportunity. Jose Ramirez said, I could have made more than 200 million in a contract if I went out on the free agent market. I took the Indians Guardians deal of 150 million. The difference between the two isn't going to change my life at all. And so we got lucky that a young man that we brought in at 16 years old in the Dominican, he left school in the 6th grade, bounced around and just practiced baseball. He's 5'9", 180, and is one of the best players in the game of baseball and has been the last 5 years. And he's a terrific young man and one hell of a baseball player.
I got the look from Pat that we're running.
Last question.
Yeah, health of Mr. Our starting pitcher, Beebe.
Yeah, his velocity's down. Shane Bieber, he'll be fine. I think a shortened spring training might have affected what he's up to. I think pitching in 40-mile-an-hour winds and 40-degree weather doesn't help. I think he's going to rebound and be the stud that he is on the mound. So that's one person you don't really have to worry about is Shane Bieber. But always a treat to be with you. Go Guardians. Come see us at the ballpark. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to have you pull a ticket here before you step down.
Is there one with sticky stuff on it?
Well, then don't pick that one.
Yeah. There you go.
All right. All right. So thank you very much, Bob, for your presentation today. So our Rotabuck raffle winner and the jackpot is up to $456. And today's payout is $11. So roughly 2.5 tanks of gas. 717-605, 717-605. Mimi, all right. Is it the truth? Oh, not the black one yet. So here's your envelope. So I'll take it. Thank you, Mimi, for donating that back. And our dad joke of the day had to be related to baseball. Who is the corniest baseball player of all time? Corniest. Ty Cobb.